Overbound here, and you are watching my entire Sonic the Hedgehog style pixel art series for Photoshop. It starts off a little slow when you learn about painting tools, color selection, and grids. But once you get through that, I'll teach you how to make Sonic style sloped grass, curves, and even loop-de-loops. I hope you learn a lot and have some fun too. Thanks for watching. I'm going to show you guys the basic tools for drawing pixel art and manipulating color within Photoshop. Now normally when people start using Photoshop for drawing pixel art, they try to come over here to this menu, immediately see this brush tool, click the brush tool, and start painting. And this might seem fine at first, but if you zoom in closely here, you can see that these pixels aren't solid color. They have transparency to them, especially around the edges. What's happening here is Photoshop has a fall off for the brush tool, where pixels furthest away from the center of the brush fall off towards transparency, and eventually the pixels do become entirely transparent at the edge of the brush. And that's not what we want at all. We want these really nice hard edges for pixel art. So usually their next step is they start to look at this menu at the top here, maybe open a couple things, look around and say, hardness. Maybe if I increase the hardness to 100%, that will fix my problem. So then they might paint some more, and yeah, it is harder, it looks better. But if you zoom in very closely, you can see even at 100% hardness, there's still some fall off. The problem is you're using the wrong tool for pixel art. You need to be using the pencil tool. And the pencil tool is actually underneath the brush tool. If you click and hold down the brush tool, a little menu will pop up and the pencil tool will be right there. So if you go ahead and select that pencil tool and you start painting, I've got a selection, hang on. That's a good lesson right there. If you start painting and you don't see anything, you either have a selection on screen that you're not aware of, in which case you need to come up here to your marquee tool and unselect the board, or you don't have your layer selected. So go ahead with my layer selected and no current selection, I can then paint anywhere on the board. So I'll start painting with the pencil tool, and that looks harder. And if I zoom in, you can see that it's creating precise, hard edges. From there, I can decrease the size with my brackets on my keyboard, or up here in the menu. You can see right now it's set to a size of 1 all the way up to 5,000. Let's go ahead and set that to 1 and do a little painting so you can see what that looks like. It's just 1 pixel like you'd expect. Exactly what you want. So the thing to take away is that the pencil tool is the tool to use for drawing pixels in Photoshop. Next thing you might want to do is change your color. There's a couple ways to do this. Your current colors are active over here in the menu, or active over here on the right. If you double click one, you can change it. You will always draw with the front color, but this back one's here as an alternative color. You might want a easier way to change color than double clicking over here. You might want a quicker way. Well, there's actually a panel that Photoshop comes with that's called the color panel, and you can select it up here in the menu, or in this Windows menu. It's right here, color, and it might appear somewhere else on your screen, and it will probably appear with these RGB sliders right here. I prefer hue, saturation, and brightness sliders, so I just come over to this little drop down menu and click hue, saturation, because then I can just select a hue, select how much saturation I want, and select how bright I want it, which to me is a little more intuitive than trying to mix RGB to get a color that you want. Okay, so there's your color panel. When you're changing your colors, you need to make sure you have the color selected up here. So if I go ahead and I click this back color here and I start adjusting, you can see it's adjusting the back color. I'm still drawing with the front color, but I'm adjusting the back color. You need to go ahead and select the front color to change it. So that's pretty much the basic color options in Photoshop, or the way you select color. The next tool we want to cover is the erase tool. And the erase tool is right here. It's just a block on the menu, and it comes by default at this brush setting up here in mode. And if you zoom in closely and you start erasing, you will see that the edges aren't hard, just like the brush. In fact, if you open up this little menu, you can see it has a hardness option just like the brush. Well, we don't want soft pixels. We don't want any transparency fall off. What we want is something similar to the pencil tool, where it leaves hard lines behind. And if you look under this mode menu up here, there's a little pencil option, and that works just as you'd expect. It erases with in a similar fashion to the way the pencil draws. It leaves hard edges behind. Get rid of all those nasty transparencies. Goodbye. There's also a block up here. This one's just like this one's a little bit strange. I tend to use the brush and the pencil the most. The pencil for pixel art, of course. You can adjust its size with the brackets, as you can do with the pencil. If I did not mention that, you can select the size of it with the brackets on the keyboard, or you can come up here to the menu. Works the same way for the pencil, the brush, and the erase tool, but you'll just be focusing on the pencil and the erase tool for pixel art. The last thing I want to show you is the paint bucket tool. And normally right off the bat you can't see the paint bucket tool on the left menu here. It's a lot of times covered up by this gradient tool. But much like with the brush tool, if you hold down the gradient tool, you will see a paint bucket tool underneath. And it works very similar to what you'd expect from a paint bucket tool in any sort of paint program. You can select an area and change its color. It has some extra features though as well. First of which is anti-aliasing. This will probably be on by default. You'll want it off, and I'll show you why. If I come in here with anti-aliasing on and I paint, you can see it just added a color between the color I was painting. Sorry, let me get a different color up here so it's more the change is more visible. If I paint with the anti-aliasing tool on, you can see that I get this intermediate color between them, between the color I was painting over and the colors that are next to it, and I don't want that. So if you just leave anti-aliasing off, you won't have that problem. It'll leave a hard edge, just as the pencil tool does. There's another option that might cause you some confusion, and that's this tolerance tool. With a tolerance level of 0, it will only color one and only one color. If I click this middle color here, it only paints that. If I click this color here, it only paints that. But if I turn this up to say 128 and I paint, you can see it painted 2 colors. If I then set that down to, or set it even higher, let's try 255, which is its max setting, it changed all 3 colors. So generally speaking, for pixel art, you want to leave that at 0. Now there's one more setting we need to talk about for this paint bucket tool. It's this contiguous button up here. And what contiguous does is it says, with it checked, I'm only going to paint the color that is touching itself. If I have another square with the same color off in a different place on the board, and I paint a different color over it, oops, I've got another selection, so I'm going to go ahead and select my marquee tool and just click off the board. Go back to the paint bucket now. Anyway, if I then paint this here, you can see that this color down here was not changed, even though it's the exact same color that was up here. However, with contiguous off, it will change both. It will change any color that's on this layer that is exactly the same color, regardless of whether or not it's touching. This is really handy if you're trying to change the color of something. So if I come in here and let's say I want to change this this building to orange, I want it, but there's another building over here that's exactly the same building, and I might want to change it both at the same time. So let's go ahead and like change this to maybe a blue. Start with this color, and with contiguous off, if I click this red line here, you can see that the identical red line over here also changed. With contiguous on, you know that's not the case. Let's go ahead and turn it off and finish painting this guy. So there's our lightest color. We'll come over here to our menu, decrease the brightness a little, paint again. You can see that every pixel that was red, that shade of red, is now blue. And we can do it one more time. And now we've got the blue, the building. The red for these back buildings was the same as the darkest red on that, so that's why that changed. It was all the same color. But say you might not actually want that to change. Well, there is actually the paint bucket tool can be used in congruence with the marquee tool. So if I go ahead and I select half this square with make a selection of half this square, and I then try to paint this square with my paintbrush, you can see that I only paint the part of the square or the rectangle that's inside of this selection. If with that off, or with the selection off, it would paint the whole square. In fact, it would paint up here too, because contiguous is off. So whatever's inside a selection is the only thing that can be painted. In fact, if I go ahead and I select this entire circle or entire rectangle, I'm not very good with my shapes apparently, and I paint over this color up here, you can see because contiguous was off, it still painted everything that was that color, but it only painted what was inside the triangle or the selection. That actually looks more like a square. With contiguous on, if I paint up here, nothing happens because contiguous has the same effect regardless of whether or not you're inside the selection or not. Still paint that way too. That goes for a lot of tools in Photoshop. They can be used in conjunction with one another, so keep that in mind. For instance, if I select half this and I paint with my pencil, I can't paint outside the selection. So selection tools can be very useful, and I will cover them in more detail in a later video. But for now, I just wanted to show you how all the paint bucket tool works, the pencil tool works, why not to use the pen tool, the eraser, and you should be all set to start making pixel art in Photoshop. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you appreciated the video. Overbound out. Overbound here. This week I want to show you how to use Photoshop for creating level graphics. Specifically, we're going to look at things like grids and rulers and this info panel over here. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to go up to the edit menu and go down to preferences. And we'll just hit general. I always click general. Image interpolation needs to be set to nearest neighbor. I've covered that before, but I just wanted to stress it here one last time. With selections and scaling and rotating bitmaps, Photoshop will add anti-aliasing and transparencies to those pixels, and you don't want that, so nearest neighbor shuts that off. Next, we're going to go down here to units and rulers. We want to make sure rulers is set to pixels. That will ensure that on the side we get to look at pixels. Down here on guides, grids, and slices, we're going to look at this grid section here. And this is very important. You want to set up a grid so that it works by powers of 2. I choose 256 between 256 pixels. There's one major grid line, and then that's then subdivided 16 times so that there are 16 by 16 square grid lines everywhere, with a major grid line appearing every 256 pixels. Video game graphics are generally made by powers of 2, 16, 32, 64, 128, and 256 on so up. Video game graphics are always made by that, and you always want to design your graphics to work at that scale. Those lines are where you chop your graphics and your level pieces. You always work at least 16 by 16. So with that grid, we just want to turn it on here in the view, and I'm going to go ahead and open view up and checkbox extras here. With extras checked, you can see that the grid comes on. If it doesn't, you need to come back up here to this menu and come down here to show. Make sure grid is checked. Everything in the show menu is turned on and off by the extras button there, and but it does also need to be checked in the show menu. So if I had grid unchecked here, it wouldn't show even with the extras on. The reason why I point that out is because Control H is a really handy keyboard shortcut for turning on and off extras, and therefore turning on and off your grid. Let's zoom in close and look at this grid. As I said earlier, all video game graphics are made by powers of 2. That means if I come in here and select one of these squares, there's 16 by 16. 4 of them is 32 by 32. 16 of them is 64 by 64, so on up. I also want you to notice over here in this menu on the left, or on the right, you get a height and width in pixels. If you don't, you need to come up to this menu and go to panel options, and from here your ruler units can be changed. Set it to pixels, hit OK. Now the size of my selection box, or what I currently am dragging around, is listed up here, 32 by 32. You always need to keep track of those numbers, so that's a handy panel to do it in. As with any panel, you can get to you can open them up from this Windows menu. The info panel is right here. You can see it has a check by it because it's open. You can uncheck it to turn it off, and check it to turn it back on. Sort of outside the scope of this video, but these little color picker looking things here just display the color of what you're currently hovering over, and you can choose how you want that color to display. RGB, hue, saturation, those are probably the two you'd want to mess with. So that's what I have set up here: RGB, hue, saturation, brightness. Your X and Y coordinates of your mouse are listed over here. In the top left corner is 0, 0x, 0y. And then as you move down, your values increase all the way at the bottom. Y is vertical, X is horizontal. I assume most people know that, but just in case. When working with pixels, it's very important to keep all these measurements in mind. So work on powers of 2, make your graphical patterns fit into 16 pixels or 32 pixels or so on up. Just make sure it's a power of 2. This grid snaps up here back in the view menu. There's a snap option. It has a submenu under it called snap to. It decides what things will snap to. The grid is is very important to us, but guides are also helpful. So make sure snap is on and grids are on, and guides. If you make a selection and you hold down Control and you move that selection, it'll move the shape with it, or the underlying bitmap. If you then let go of Control, right now I'm still holding it, but if you let go, it'll start snapping to the grid. When you hold Control, it doesn't snap. That's helpful because, as I've said, you want to lay out your graphics on a 16 by 16 grid scale, and so that helps you line up. You can turn off the grid another way by you can stop snapping when grid shuts off. So if I hit Control H to turn off the grid and I make a selection, gotta still hold Control, at least to drag the selection out. And then let go. There's no snapping, even without Control held down. When you're pressing Control, what you're doing is temporarily switching to the tool above the marquee tool. It's the Move tool. It moves the entire layer if you don't have a selection. If you have a selection, I'm going to turn my grid back on by pressing Control H. And if you have a selection and you move with the Move tool, it'll only move that selection. I usually have my marquee tool selected and then just hold Control down when I want to temporarily switch to the Move tool. That way I can move around graphics very quickly. Space will move your screen around too, holding space and dragging with the mouse. So you can move graphics around, navigate with the mouse, hold Control, move around, position your graphic, and then make another selection. If you want to make a duplicate, you can hold Control and Alt and drag with the marquee tool selected. This changes you to the Move tool and the duplicate. Then you can pull a selection out, and you can pull out as many as you need. That's all I'm going to cover this week. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. In the next couple of weeks, we'll really be getting into some more interesting topics, actually drawing graphics and creating new graphics rather than just looking at tools. So stick with the series. Thank you for all the support. Overbound out. Hello, Overbound here. I'm going to show you how to use Photoshop to create slopes and curves for 2D platforming games that your characters can run up and down. First, we need to take care of one setting here in Photoshop. It's under Edit, Preferences, and General. We just need to make sure that this image interpolation is set to nearest neighbor. What this will do is it forces Photoshop to not create any new colors. Normally when you stretch something or warp something in Photoshop, it will try to smooth it out by adding more colors to make the change more gradual. But we don't want that with pixel art. We want precise control of our colors when we're working with pixel art. So by putting that to nearest neighbor, we take care of that. Okay, with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and select the right layer and select my marquee tool and go ahead and select this grass right here. With that done, I'm going to right click and go to free transform. You can also get to free transform up here in the edit menu. It's easier to right click though. In newer versions of Photoshop, CS6 or newer, you will need to make sure that this nearest neighbor is selected from this interpolation menu too. In older versions of Photoshop, the edit preferences setting that we changed took care of that already. So with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and right click again and go to warp. And warp allows you to move or push pixels around to great effect. Undo that. We want to use one of the predetermined custom shapes that come with Photoshop. We want to warp it with a rise. And when we select rise from this little warp menu up here, we can see that our grass is now sloped, just like that little graphic up there. And we can adjust how much we want it to bend up to 100%. To confirm this change, you just need to hit enter a couple times. And I'll go ahead and zoom in on it so you can see what it looks like. Very cool. If I wanted to create another or the opposite side for this hill, we could just select this grass again, holding Control and Alt together with our marquee tool selected, and pulling will create a duplicate. And we can then right click that duplicate, go to free transform, and set its width up here, this little W, from 100 to -100, and hit enter. And then we get the opposite slope. Okay. We want to go ahead and show off a couple of different warp shapes that you can use. So I'm going to select this grass over here. I think that's on, it's on this layer right here. So I'm going to select that and move it up here so it's get a better view of it. With that selected, we're going to right click again and go to free transform. And again, we're going to right click and go to warp. This time we're going to select arch, and arch will give you a nice curve, a half circle if you will. And that looks great just like that, but you can also set it to -100, and that'll give you a nice like Sonic the Hedgehog style half pipe. Enter to confirm that change. And I'll turn off the grid so you can see what that looks like. Pretty cool. Okay, there's one last warp tool or warp shape that is very useful, but it's more useful for this log pattern down here than it is for the grass. If you are using tubes or some sort of metal or basically anything but grass, you don't want to warp it quite the same way as grass because it won't look as good. So this shape is more for, or this warp is more for like tubes or tree trunk or something that isn't grass. So with my tree selected here, I'm going to right click, free transform, make sure this is still on nearest neighbor. Yep, it is. Right click again and go to warp. And this time I'm going to select arc. And arc works similar to arch. Or I'm sorry, arch works similar to arc, but it warps it a little bit differently. And you can see that we're still maintaining this this 32 by 32 end here, whereas if we look up here, you can see it's sort of stopped at 1 pixel up here. Whoops. So that's very nice for creating tubes or something like a half pipe in Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm going to go ahead and select this, and holding Control and Alt while the marquee tool is selected and pulling will create a duplicate. And with that duplicate, I'm just going to right click it and free transform again and set the height, this little H right here, to -100. You can see then I get a nice perfect loop-de-loop. That's all I wanted to show you guys for this video. If you guys found this helpful, please like and comment and subscribe. If I get a good amount of feedback from this video, I might start uploading more pixel art tutorials, because I have a lot of information I could show you guys that would speed up workflows when creating art, especially for like Sonic the Hedgehog games. Thank you all for watching. Overbound out. Overbound here. This week I'm going to cover drawing a small pixel art scene here in Photoshop. We're going to draw some grass, some foreground tiles, and a background. And in the process, we're going to use some of the techniques I've shown in previous weeks. We're also going to learn two of my go-to shading techniques. I refer to as line shading and notch shading. So let's go ahead and get started here by selecting the marquee tool and zooming in very close. We're just going to select a 16 by 16 area. And I've got some colors I'm going to use over here. I just held Alt down to switch to my eyedropper tool that'll pick a color. And anytime you're on a color tool like the pencil tool, the paint bucket, or the brush tool, you can hold Alt down and that will switch to your color picker. Okay, so I'm just going to dump some color in there with the paintbrush tool, or the paint bucket tool, and we're going to go ahead and shade this. First I'll pull it over here so I'm close to all these colors I want to use. Zoom in closer. Okay, like I said, we're going to use line shading. So I'm going to start, oops, already messed up. I'm going to start by just putting a straight line down here that is 2 pixels wide. I have my brush set to 2 pixels and it's catching on the grid, so I just went ahead and turned that off. Went a little far, so I'll just go ahead and pick the lighter color and fix that. Okay, now let's go with this lighter color here and do the same thing. We're making a corner piece here, and I need to switch down to my 1 pixel brush and go ahead and select that little darker tool again and just shade. We want one line of the lighter colors. It works as a transition between a darker color and a lighter color, and it makes the transition a little bit smoother. Okay, I actually want, I believe this is the, oops, this is the brown we want. And we'll do the same thing there. I'm going to be going pretty quick in this video. I've covered all these tools in previous videos, so I encourage you to watch those videos to get an idea of what I'm doing as far as switching between tools. This is just kind of a video to give you an idea of the workflow, not necessarily every tool you will use to achieve that. So I've made a corner here. I'm just going to go ahead and hold Control and Alt down with my marquee tool selected to pull up some duplicates. Now I've got a nice edge tile there, and I can take this whole thing and duplicate it and reflect it with free transform and width at -100 and enter to confirm. Didn't catch the first time. Okay, now I have my nice floor tile. And I'll go ahead and just make it a little wider. Grab some of this to fill in between. We're working at powers of 2 here. You can see that right now each one of these pieces is 16 by 16, and as they go up in size you get 32 by 32 and so on up. It's very important that you work at powers of 2, or numbers that are very close to that. Let's go ahead and start on our grass. This is line shading down here, just putting a line of the darker color to transition between a lighter and darker color. Now we're going to do notching, which, well, first we need a 16 by 16 area. So we're going to select the grid, 16 by 16. I can see in the info panel that it's a 16 by 16 area. So I'll just go ahead and dump this lightest color on here. Okay. And I'm going to head and switch to my eraser tool. And it's at 1 pixel and it's a pencil. So I'll just go ahead and start erasing some of these top colors. Kind of give an outline like you might see like grass. And whoops, I'll just keep going through here and erasing, as I don't want all this extra. That's looking fairly good. Oops. Okay. Now I want to get a darker color and sort of follow that beneath. Just sort of following the pattern that I already established on the top. And this is what I refer to as notching. It's sort of random. It just 1 pixel. The idea is 1 pixel is higher than the others, but they aren't a checkerboard pattern like a dither would be. That's a little different there. I think I'll fix that. Yeah. You don't necessarily want it to be exactly the same though. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this down. There. Erase that. That way we've got a little bit more room at the top. In fact, I think I'm gonna move all this shading down just a little bit. Another pixel there. That way we have more of the lighter color at the top. And we'll just go ahead and finish off here with the paint bucket tool. Dump the paint in there. Now we've got 2 nice shades, and we can go ahead and work on our darkest shade. We'll just go ahead and sort of do this randomly. 1 pixel up, 1 pixel down is the idea, but you always want to vary the shading a bit. In fact, sometimes it's nice to put just a random space between your colors where it dips lower. It's hard to describe the process, but just notching it and sometimes skipping a pixel and putting that lighter color or that darker color in between is kind of the idea. We'll go ahead and use the paint bucket tool to finish off that lower area. And that kind of shows me some other areas that could be better, like here, maybe even back up here. Not so happy with those. So it's just kind of an artistic process of deciding where you want your pixels to land and things. It's looking pretty good. I just need to worry about down here at the bottom now. And I think that will work. So now we've got our foreground and background. Next, let's add a pattern to this foreground. To do so, I'm going to create a pattern. I'm going to select a 16 by 16 area and fill it with white. Then I'm going to use my polygon lasso tool, which is just a selection tool that will create straight lines and connect them together and snap to the grid as well. So I'll just go ahead and click 3 times to snap and get a 16 by 16 triangle. And I'm going to set my color to black and fill that triangle. Okay. I'm going to grab that triangle now and put it on a new layer by copying and pasting. I'm going to overlay it onto my piece of foreground here. I'm going to hold Control and Alt down, having my marquee tool selected, to change to the move tool and move with a duplication. So I'll just drag out, and that duplicates the pattern there. I'm just going to do this until I cover the entirety of the foreground. I've created a bunch of copies here over in the layers, and I need those on a single layer, so I'll go ahead and hold Shift down to select them all and merge. Right click and merge. Now I'll select this little blend mode menu up here that says normal and set it to soft light and reduce the opacity down to maybe 55%. Maybe a little bit higher. There we go. 72 works. Okay, now I'll merge these together, and I just need to overlay my grass on top now. I want a little bit more of a block, so I'm going to move, or I'm going to duplicate this layer, same way as before, holding Control and Alt down with the marquee tool selected. And go ahead and get this grass on a new layer. Then I'll overlay the grass on top of this shape. And I'll merge my grass because I've created duplicates now by holding Control and Alt, and I will remove the top here where the foreground pokes up above the grass. I've got a nice little foreground tile there. Let's add a shadow. To do a shadow with your foreground on one layer, right click the layer, hit blending options. You need to go down to drop shadow, and you can see it adds a drop shadow. We want a very specific shadow though. We want the angle set to 90 so it's straight up and down. We want the size to be 0 so that it's the same size as our shape, and we want the spread or the distance to be 4. You want spread at 0, otherwise it won't look quite as good. So with all that done, we'll just hit OK. You can see this drop shadow created. Very nice. We'll go ahead and merge these two layers together, and that will make our drop shadow a permanent part of the bitmap rather than an effect we can turn off and on. Okay, now I've got my drop shadow, and I can go ahead in here and get rid of these extra colors our drop shadow created by just using the colors that already existed beforehand. So I'll get my paint bucket tool, select a color I want to replace, and just go through here and paint. I think that's about all of them. Maybe this one here. Nope. Alright, we'll call that good. Might be an extra color in there, but we're in a hurry. Okay, now let's create a background. We're going to use line shading for this background. So we're just going to grab a little 64 by 64 area and paint it this darkest blue. Next, or actually let's go with the lightest blue. I think that'll be easier. My keyboard shortcuts would work. Okay, lightest blue. Then we'll take this top area here, set to the darkest. Then we'll move our selection down, set it to the second darkest, and we'll do it once more here. Actually, let's do this. It's a contiguous one, so I don't get rid of that swatch. Now I just want to create some sort of transition between these different colors of blue. Oops. I decided I wanted more of the middle color there. And I want to do a line transition. So I'm just going to select one pixel, and we're going to do just like we did on the foreground art down there. We're just going to set a light color in between the light and dark color to make the transition smoother. Do the same up here. Cool. Now that I look at it, a little too much of the light blue. Okay. Now I've got my background, got my foreground. Let's move this foreground a little bit down here. Select this darkest blue, and I'm going to do one last thing before we call this good. Lower the saturation, lower the brightness a little bit more. There we go. Make a couple of little mountains. There. We'll just fill those in. Maybe chop this one's peak off just a tad there. And get our lightest blue. Make a couple of quick clouds. Very quick here. This is just to give you an idea how you can use different tools that I've shown you in previous videos to make your own pixel art. Of course, we're not going into very advanced pixel art here. We're just trying to get the general idea. As I tend to zoom in and out a lot when I create pixel art because I want to see it at multiple sizes, and it's kind of just an artistic process, but these aren't that great of clouds, but they'll work. Okay, so now let's just go ahead and still don't like that cloud. All right, there we go. Now let's just go ahead and merge our background and foreground for the finished result. And there it is. Multiple angles here. We've covered this little notch shading that we use for the grass. And we've covered the line shading we use for the sky and the edges of the foreground. And then we added this little pattern over top. Yeah, that's really all I wanted to cover this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe if you did. There'll be more videos next week. Overbound out. Overbound here. This week I'm going to show you guys how to make a metal platform that would work great for a platforming game. Maybe a stage that's like techno based, or a warship, or maybe some sort of factory. Let's go ahead and get started. I've got some colors here that I've chosen for us to use already, and I'm gonna hit Control H and turn on my grid. As always, the grid is 16 by 16 squares, and the bigger grid lines right now are 64 by 64. I want to select an area that is 16 pixels wide by 11 pixels tall, so I'll do that with my marquee tool here. It's up here in the menu if you need it, when you need it. And I'll switch to my paint bucket tool by pressing G on the keyboard, assuming it's visible over here in the menu. G will get you the paint bucket tool selected. Okay, painted the middle blue there. I'm going to switch to my pencil and do some line shading up here. I'm just going to do a highlight. It's going to have one pixel at the very top and then skip a pixel and have another line. That'll create a nice transition between the lighter blue and the darker blue. And then let's get a really dark blue, sort of a greenish blue, and have the bottom 2 pixels in that color. And that'll be a nice shadow. Okay, that's great. That's the majority of our steel platform. I'm just going to pull it out here so I have a 64 by 64 area. Next, I'm going to draw some lines. I'm going to draw a light line down here and a dark line up here. And what this is a little, you can imagine it as an indentation in the platform. So it's a groove that slants in towards the platform. And so the light hits the bottom groove because it's aiming towards the sun, as is the top of the platform, of course. With that done on one side, I'm just going to free transform it here so I get the same number of pixels on the other side. Just going to free transform and mirror it by doing negative 100% as the width. There we go. That's a little bit wider than I wanted though, so I'm just going to erase a couple of these pixels with the darker blue, or the middle blue I should say. One more. And in fact, let's do this. Let's do a transition Yeah, I like that. Sort of a transition between the lighter and the darker. And it still looks like a group. Okay, let's go ahead and pull this down. So we've got 2 of them there. Perfect. Notice that this is now in a 32 by 32 area and a 64 by 64 if you're going all the way across this. So it'll tile nicely into bigger sizes that are also powers of 2, which of course, as we've talked about in previous videos, is very important. Next, we're going to create some hashing or hatching that goes along the back here to sort of support these 2 platforms. We're going to select black here because this is going to be behind everything, so it's going to be very dark. And we're just going to make a 3 by 3 square. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we'll pull that up at a 45-degree angle so we make duplicates of it. And I'm just holding Control and Alt down with my marquee tool selected, so I'm cloning and pulling out a copy of my selection. And I'll just keep pulling up, moving right 1 pixel and up 1 pixel every time. Just pull it up here. That's good. I'll select it and make a duplicate of the whole thing. Right click, free transform, set the width again, -100, and enter a couple times to confirm. I'm going to try to make an X here, a perfect X. If it's a square, then I've succeeded, and I have. But it's 15 pixels by 15 pixels, and I really want it 16 pixels by 16 pixels. So I'm going to pull it out by just moving it up 1 and right 1, separating the center there, and then just filling it back in. And the point it comes to now is 2 pixels rather than 1 pixel, but that's just the way you have to do it when you're working with powers of 2. Yeah, it'd be nice if you could come to 1 pixel and work with even numbers, but it doesn't work that way. And I'm just gonna make sure, okay, this is in a 16 by 16 area, or I'm sorry, this is 16 by 16 in size, and it's cutting, the center of it is cut right at the 16 by 16 line. So the whole X or hatch fits perfectly symmetrical in there. It's halfway between the top and the bottom of this 32 by 16 area. So I'm going to pull it behind. Oops. Actually, I'll leave it in front because I want to see it. I'm going to create some duplicates and then merge them together. And then I'll move it behind and merge again. Perfect. Now I'm going to pull this out. Oops, my color swatch is coming with me. So that I get 32 by 256 area. I'll merge that all back together. And I'm going to add a little bit of visual flair to it now. Just going to select the center area, only on the right side, because I'm actually going to duplicate this side and mirror it again, just like I've done a couple times before to keep the speed up. So I'm just going to create this, or have this lighter color right there, and I'm just going to create a line that goes across. And this area, this whole area, all the transparent pixels I'm going to fill in. So it's just going to be a nice pattern that is in the center of our platform. And I'm going to turn off the grid here. I'm going to fancy this up a little by just adding a little bit of more pattern here. Just create a nice little flare or something. Oops. Yeah, that looks cool. So I'll just mirror that. Control H, turn my grid back on, delete that side. If you guys find that I'm going very fast for you, there's a reason for that. I'm not trying to explain every single tool I use here. I've made a bunch of videos that do that already. This is to show you the workflow of what it's like to make pixel art. I think I actually want that middle area expanded out a little more, so I'm just gonna pull it out here. snap it to the next 16 pixels. There we go. Looks pretty good. Looks like a nice metal platform. You could do some sort of ground underneath here. Just maybe a different color at that point. Maybe something like yellow. I don't know. And make blocks out of it or something. But we're going to continue to focus on just this guy here by adding another pattern to it. And the pattern we're going to add is sort of a circuit board. And that's why I have this yellow here, because I just want it to have a little bit more flair. So I'm just going to draw some straight lines across this 32 by 32 area. And I want to make sure the pattern loops well. Need to make sure I have enough lines to cover it well enough. So that's a nice even. It's sort of a artistic part. It's just trying to get a look that looks filled enough to overlay on top of our shape. That's probably good enough for the video. I'll copy and paste that and overlay it on top of here. Fits in the 32 by 32 area, so I'm just gonna create duplicates to cover the whole platform. There we go. Merge all those together, and we'll set the blend mode to vivid light and set the opacity to maybe 75%. And not a big fan of where this is over top the hatching, so I think I'll delete that part of our pattern. There we go. That looks nice. And there's sort of the finished effect. It's just a little platform. I'm still tweaking it as I'm talking, but just a little platform we can use. Oops, that's why that happened. I thought it got stronger, but what happened was I accidentally made a duplicate. But yeah, there's the finished effect. Let's look at it with our tiles from last week. Okay, so I've pulled in our tiles from last week and I just expanded the sky. Now we can just take this new tile that we made, copy paste it. Whoops. Sometimes I hit that keyboard by mistake. We'll bring it down here. It's a little bit too big, so we'll just delete the edges. We'll merge these two layers and we'll crop it down. Perfect. So there's a little there it is. I know I said we could use this in a techno level, but it's very versatile, I guess. I like mixing technology elements with the foresty or grassy kind of elements, so that looks very cool to me. Maybe could use some more tweaking, which we'll do in later videos. We're gonna use these two tiles to expand into a full tile set in later videos, so you'll have that to look forward to. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, please subscribe and hit the thumbs up. Share it if you like. It all helps me out a ton, and I'm extremely grateful for it. Thank you for your time today. Overbound out. Overbound here. This week, I'm going to show you how to take this metal platform we previously made, and we're going to make curved versions of it. In the past, I've shown you how to create curved versions of grass using the Photoshop Warp tools, and that works pretty well for grass, but it doesn't work on these more detailed platforms. So we're going to have to do it by hand, but I do have some tools and techniques I want to show you here to do it quicker. So let's go ahead and get started. We want to create a circular selection that's 256 pixels by 256 pixels. That's a power of 2, and it'll be a good size for our curve. So I'm going to go ahead and select the marquee tool, the elliptical marquee tool over here on the left. It's the second option on your tool panel, and sometimes you have to hold down and get this little menu out to get the elliptical marquee tool, because the rectangular is default. So we'll go ahead and select our elliptical marquee tool. And I have my grid set up here, so there's a major grid line every 64 pixels. So if I get exactly, if the edges of my circle touch the edge of 4 of these boxes, that will be exactly 256 by 256 pixels. If you have trouble with measuring, I encourage you to go back and look at my grids and measuring video. There's a lot of useful information there in that video about measuring pixels. So I'm going to go ahead and hold Alt and Shift down and create a 256 pixel by 256 pixel area. There, perfect. We want to take our selection and add a border 1 pixel inside of the current circle. To do this, Photoshop has a tool. It's under Select, Modify, Border, and we'll just set it 1 pixel thick. We'll hit OK. If we zoom in here, we can see it made a 1 pixel border, so that we can color this 1 pixel thick circle outline. Let's go ahead and do that by clicking inside of the circle with our paint bucket tool. Now you can see there's a problem. It changed colors outside the selection. What's happening here is this is not a hard selection. Photoshop is coloring these outside pixels by half their the color value. So you're getting a blend of the background color and the foreground color. In order to avoid this, it's kind of a cumbersome process, because there's no just turn off soft edges for this. And so what I've done is I've created a Photoshop action, which is a series of steps I do to this border to make it a hard edge. And it's kind of complicated, and it's more than I want to get into in this video, but I'm going to leave the link for the action in the description for the video, and then you'll be able to download that action and load it into Photoshop, and you can use my action to do this tutorial with me. Let's undo our yellow paint and use my action to get the right effect. So we'll go ahead here in the menu, undo our color and our border, and we'll go ahead and load my action. If you don't see the action panel, it's under Window, Actions. You can see it'll pop up here. If you need to load my action that you've downloaded from the video description, go ahead and drop this little menu down here on the right and look for Load Action. This will bring up a menu or a browser window that you can use to navigate to the action and load it. Once you've done that, you can see it right here in the menu. It'll say 1 pixel border. If I go ahead and just hit play, I can see that I've created a 1 pixel border. And if I then fill that in with the color, it created a hard edge, just what I wanted. So now all we have to do is we have to line up our art next to this and fill in the colors as we go. We need a smaller circular selection to get started on our upper platform. So let's go ahead and select our ellipse marquee tool. And then if you have your larger circle on the 256 by 256 grid, you should have a major grid line intersecting the center of your larger circle. And I'm going to hold Alt and Shift down while I'm making this selection so that it comes out from the center, and I'm going to drag it all the way down until I hit that bottom blue pixel of the top steel platform, and then I'll let go. You can see in here it's perfect. So now all we have to do is do the same thing again that we did on the bottom. We'll go ahead, and we've already got our selection, so we'll just hit play. I'll just start filling this in. Magic wand tool. I'm just gonna quick do this. Whoops. I'll do that. Just takes a minute. It's a few steps, but it's way better than doing it by hand. Okay, there we go. If we zoom out, perfect. So let's grab the hatching and get this finished. Come down here, find the hatching, and there's a couple different ways you could do this. You could take the individual hatching on a layer by itself and come up here and position them manually inside of your blue ramp, and that kind of works. It would require more tweaking, but in this case I think I'm going to go back and use the warp tools to just warp the X's and leave the rest of the shape as is. So I need to create a selection that is a pattern of 256 by 256 of these hatchings. There we go. I know that 4 squares for the major grid lines is 256 by 256, so that will work nicely. And I will then select the hatchings and right click with my marquee tool selected and go to free transform, and then I will hit warp, and I will select arch from this menu and set the bend to 100%. Right click again on the selection, go back to scale, and we'll scale this into position. That looks pretty good right there. I'm just going to hit enter. Whoops. There we go. Now we just need to flip it around by selecting it, making a copy by holding Control and Alt at the same time. Free transform. Set the height to -100. Hit enter. And then drag that down into position. I believe we're going to have just a couple of lines to fill in here. You can, of course, adjust this since it's on its own layer. So I'm going to adjust the top portion down 1 pixel and the bottom portion up 1 pixel to fill in that little gap. Still 2 pixels there. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill those in myself. That'll work nicely. That side doesn't have it. And you know, there is a little bit of difference between the sides. So you can delete half of it and then flip it around as well. And that'll get you a more uniform look. So we free transformed, and then we just set the width to -100 to mirror the shape and snap it into position. Okay, there we go. Turn off the grid here. We could clean this up a little bit. You can see the warp effect added a bunch of little pixels that are just kind of poking out there. These would be good things to go back and erase, but it would be pretty boring to watch me do all that. So that's something you can take care of on your own. Keep in mind that this shape is really just 1/4 of the entire shape, so you could really just take a quarter of this thing, clean it up, copy the entire layer here, or the entire shape there, clean it up, and then flip it or mirror it to reduce your workload. And then you could easily have a loop that way with a more uniform look. This is really all I wanted to show this week. I want you guys to keep in mind that you can use this technique for slopes too. You might have a little bit more trouble with the X's, but the drawing of the blue platforms and things, that'll work exactly the same. You can draw out a shape, and as long as you can get a selection of that shape, you can use my 1-pixel border tool and use it to speed up your workflow in making these sort of platforms and things. If you guys enjoy these videos, I really appreciate it if you like them, and subscribe to my channel. Helps out a ton. I'm sitting right at 500 subscribers, which is a big success for me, so I want to thank everybody that subscribed for that. And I also want to remind you, you can check out my Sonic fan game, Sonic Time Twisted, which I'm hoping to get out at the start of 2016. You can play the demo now, and I'll have the full release around that time. Thanks for watching. Overbound out. Overbound here. Today I want to show you how you can make some completely automated pixel art clouds just like the ones you see on the screen here. It only takes a second and it's really fun, so let's go ahead and get started. Just going to go ahead and delete these, and then come over here to the left and select the gradient tool. You may have to click over here and find it underneath the paint bucket, but the gradient tool should be there. Go ahead and select that, and then double click this little gradient you'll see up in the screen. So I've already made one here earlier, but basically the idea is the center of our cloud's going to be white, the top of our cloud's going to be this light blue color, and the sky underneath our cloud is going to be this color here. You can double click these little arrow points to change their colors. I'm going to make this last color just a little bit brighter. Okay. And you can add more by clicking anywhere underneath the gradient, and you can pull them off or remove them by just pulling them off. So once I've got this where I like it, which I do, I'll go ahead and hit OK. And then with a new layer, I'm going to take the gradient tool, and I'm going to hold down Shift, and from the top of my artboard here, I'm going to pull all the way down to the bottom. And just like I want. The top of the cloud's going to be this dark color, this dark blue, then it's going to go to white, and the bottom, or our sky, is going to be this color blue. But I don't want so many colors, since this is supposed to be pixel art, and I want it to have a sort of pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and go up to Image, Mode, Index Color. And this gives us the option to reduce the number of colors that are actually being used to generate this image or create this image that we've got in front of us. So we can select selective color or adaptive color from this menu. Either one of those options will work under palette, and set the color to whatever your preference is. I think 8 looks pretty good, but you could try 16 or even go as low as 4. That's probably stick with 8 though. And then from this little dither menu, it might be set on none originally, but you can select diffusion and set a percentage. 25, 100%. Noise is another good one. My favorite is pattern though, so I'm going to use pattern. We just want a little bit of pattern to our clouds. And if you don't want to do this, or if you don't want to use one of these built-in patterns, you can always set this to none and then draw in your own pattern. The reason why we need the pattern will make sense here in a minute. So I'll go ahead and apply that pattern. And now I'm in index color mode. I need to go back to RGB mode because Photoshop is limited in what it can do in index color mode. So come back up here to image, mode, and RGB. With that out of the way, the next step and our last step is to come to filter and filter gallery. And this is going to bring up a little filter screen, and I've already been playing this from my time before the preview, but you can see how just with a couple of these filter options it gives you some pretty cool clouds, and you can play with them to get different effects. Ocean ripple works good. Glass works well. Lots of different options. You can go from big puffy clouds. You might even be able to make some snow out of this. Another one that works good is, oops, not dark strokes, sprayed strokes. It kind of looks sort of like clouds you might see in Yoshi's Story or Yoshi's Island or something like that. But yeah, there's a lot of different effects here you can play in. Spatter, sprayed stroke, ocean ripple, and glass seem to work the best for me, but maybe some of these other ones would work for you. But once you're happy with your effect, which I'm going to go with this ocean ripple, I'm going to increase that a little bit. Go with something like that. You can just hit OK, and your effect is applied, and there are your clouds. This effect doesn't have to be limited to clouds. If you change your gradient and change your pattern, you could maybe get the tops of the tree, or at least the start of the top of a tree out of it. If you made a light green in the center and darker greens on the outside of your gradient. There are perhaps other uses for this too, so I encourage you to experiment with it and see what you come up with. So yeah, that's all I wanted to show today. If you like the video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Share the video around if you have friends that might find this technique useful. Thank you for watching. Overbound out. Overbound here. I got a request to do some graphics for a city style level. Got it from one of my subscribers, so I just wanted to do a quick video on making a building something like this. The one we're going to make is going to be red, but otherwise it'll be pretty similar. So let's go ahead and start. Up here in the corner of my document, I've already created a couple textures just to make this video a little bit shorter. I've got a brick texture here that tiles at 16 by 8. So this bottom section is just the top brick cut in two, and the ends are flipped around. The little shading here is going to be the shading for the edge of our building, and it's just a gradual gray getting lighter as we go along, and using that line shading I've talked about in previous videos, where you do a line of the lighter color and then the darker color again. It helps make the transition look a little more gradual. Last, I just have a little shape here. It's just a 45-degree angle, which is a pixel up and to the left each time. You just need a little square like that. This one is 8 pixels tall, so that's a good size for you to have. So go ahead and make all these tiles. You can pause the video and look at this if you have trouble, but just go ahead and make these tiles, because this is what we're going to use to make our building. Next, let's take our two textures, or our two black textures here, and merge them together. I just want to put this one right on top here. So I've just got my marquee tool selected here, and I always use Control and Alt to transition between the move and marquee tools. I just want to plop this guy right down on top of there. Perfect. Now I'm going to go ahead and make this selection again, and I just want the top here, so I've got the bottom now since the pixels are connected. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the marquee tool and unselect that. Now I want to follow this shading. Whoops. I want to follow the shading up the side of this 45-degree angle. So I'm going to move my selection back here, and I'm just going to select this lightest gray, and I'm just going to paint in here. There's that. Then back to the selection tool, I'll move this a couple times, 2 pixels over, and draw 2 pixels this time. So I'm just matching the number of pixels on the vertical corner shading. I'm just matching it at a 45-degree angle though, instead of continuing the straight line. Got a little bit much there, but we'll cover over that here. The selection helps me make sure that I don't have too much selected. Actually, I meant to color with this. It helps me keep my line straight, because then I don't have to worry about going outside the selection this way, because it's outside the selection. So there's no way to draw there. just finish this up here. Okay, perfect. And then we'll add a fill, just a little bit. A lighter color yet. Can be nearly white. Whoops. Turn contiguous on there. And turn my tolerance on this paint bucket down to 0. There we go. Let's zoom out a little bit and select part of this wall here, or the edge of our building, and right click it, retransform, and pull it down. The building will be, let's keep pulling it down so it's 160 pixels tall. I believe that's 160. Here, let's double check. Yep. Oh, the height is actually 170 or 192. You know what? But that's okay. Let's go ahead and keep going with that. So I'm going to select the whole thing now, or the whole wall, and we're just going to mirror it because we want to have a two-sided building, of course. At least as far as 2D goes. Let's pull this out to the edge here. Okay, perfect. Now let's fill in this with white. Or not that white, but that color we chose earlier. Perfect. Now we need to cover our building shape with the brick pattern. I've gone ahead and laid out the brick pattern in a large enough bitmap to cover the entire building we've created here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my grid on. The grid is 16 by 16. If you don't know that already, you really should watch my grids and measurements video. You can find it on my channel pretty easily. It's an important video. So I've got this brick pattern now covering the building on a separate layer, and I just want to go ahead and hold Control or Alt down. Hold Alt down and click right between the two layers, the building on the lower layer and the bricks on the top layer. So I'm going to hold Alt down and click between them, and you'll see that the brick pattern is now clipped over the bottom layer. This is really cool. It allows us to do some different things. For one, we can change the blend mode over here to hard light maybe, and get this cool effect where we can see the shading in the background showing through our brick pattern, and it looks really nice, I think. You can adjust a lot of settings here, the opacity, or sometimes the fill color has a different effect, and which layer you're on does too, of course. And some of these different blending modes are cool to experiment with too. You can see there's all kinds of different ones. The one that we're going to stick with is hard light, though. It looks pretty good, and I like the way, especially on this side, the shading is. Okay, now we need to do a little housekeeping. Well, first, I want to mirror this side. I like the way this side turned out better, so I want to mirror it onto the other side. So let's just go ahead and I selected the area with my marquee tool, and I hit Control Shift and C in order to do a copy merge, or right here in the menu you can select copy merge too, and then it'll create a merged version of your selection on a new layer. Merged meaning that it could be on more than one layer. So I'm just going to go ahead and free transform it, set the width to -100 to mirror it, and then put it in its place. And then we'll just go ahead and delete this half of the mask and this half of the underlying building shape, and merge all the layers together. So there we have our building merged, and the sides are mirrored. Now let's set this to index color mode to remove any extra colors we don't need. So I'm going to go to Image, Mode, Index Color. And it's 8 colors right now. That includes white, so it's actually 7, because there's no white on it. It's just saying that because it's including white in the color count. Let's use color selective here, And let's set our colors to 7 and see what that looks like. Let's try 6. Still doesn't look any different. Let's try 5. Okay, that time we lost some details. Let's go back to 6. 6 is looking pretty good to me, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. Alright, now I've got 6 colors total, which is actually 5 because white doesn't count. And let's go ahead and get back into RGB mode. Menu mode, RGB. Alright, now let's make this a regular layer again by double clicking the lock and hitting OK and deleting the white background. Next, let's make a little window for our background, or our building. I want to make the window 32 by 48, and I'm going to use this brick pattern to help us get started. I'm going to copy the bricks to the top and bottom, and then I'm going to make another copy and right click it and go to free transform. And I'll just rotate it around here by putting my cursor at the edge of one of these little squares, and the little rotate box or rotate arrow comes up and you can rotate it. I'll just hit enter there and enter there. Okay, there's our little window. Let's fill in with some black. There we go. I want to get rid of this here, and I really want to change the colors here. So let's go ahead and go with maybe a brown. Lower the saturation a little bit. Alright, we'll set this to our darkest color. Maybe a little darker yet. And increase the saturation just a little bit. That'll work. Then we'll brighten it up quite a bit. Decrease the saturation. Maybe it should be more like that. Get rid of our contiguous. Whoops. Coloring the whole building there. So I'll just go ahead and make a selection around my window and color it in. There we go. Okay. Now I need to duplicate this to the other side so that there's no gap there. And I want to add like a little bit of a I'm going to move this so that there's a line in the center of it first of all. There. I want to add a little like a window lock or something. So I'll just go ahead and fill this in with this darkest brown here. And on the top, I'll add a little bit of light. That'll be like the little lock there. And then I'll add like a little bit of light there as well. Whoops, turn the grid off so I don't keep snapping to it. And then maybe even a lighter color, like almost a white. Let's try that. Gotta increase the brightness probably all the way. Decrease the saturation. Maybe a little darker. And a little bit more saturation. I think I got the... Yep, there we go. Okay, that looks pretty good there. I think I'll go ahead and round all these corners though. And let's add a highlight inside here as well. Oops. Increase my brush size once. I think we might end up making that shade a little darker yet. Or maybe we'll make this shade a little darker. And slightly more saturated. And then we'll make this one much lighter. Oh yeah, that looks much better. I think we can go even a little lighter yet, but it's getting there. Okay, there is our window. Let's go ahead and position these on a new layer over our red building. They're gonna look nice. And we'll merge all of our windows onto a layer, merge, and we'll right click them and go to blending options. We'll add a drop shadow. Now you have to be careful because when you add drop shadows, it's going to add a lot of colors. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the grid here so we can see what's going on. But there are some settings with the drop shadow that will avoid adding too many new colors. It'll still add some new colors, but not that many. So what we'll do is we'll set our size to 0, and that's the key there. As you increase size, the fuzziness of the shadow increases, if that makes sense, but the size gets bigger too. So if with the size of 0, it's going to be exactly the same size as the thing it's creating a shadow for. So then if you just set the distance to something like 8 pixels or 4 pixels and have the angle at 90, then it just gives a nice drop shadow under whatever it is you're putting a shadow under. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK to that. I'm going to cut off a little bit of the bottom here because whoa. Okay, so this is our building and it looks pretty good as is, but I want to show you one last trick you can do. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off these windows for a second and copy this building onto a new layer. Okay, then I'm just going to take these two 32 by 32 area and duplicate it over on top of the one side of the building. Perfect. Then I'm going to turn the windows back on and turn my grid back on and copy the whole thing with a Control-Shift-C to get everything. You can also hit copy merged from the menu. Otherwise, it'll only copy the current layer you're on. So there I've got a layer there. I'm going to duplicate this out and then I'm going to mirror it. Right click, free transform. This version here is on its own layer now. So I'll just set the width to -100 and I'll move it into position here. And then I'll free transform it again and reduce the width way down. Okay, perfect. Let's add a highlight to the edge of our building. This edge right here, the one we just created, is probably the edge that's closest to the sun. So let's just go ahead and make a selection that's 8 pixels wide and the width of the building, or the length of the building too. And make sure that that's in the center of the corner, and it is, because I aligned it on the 16 by 16 grid, as I do everything. Okay, so let's take this lightest red color here and make it even lighter. Increase the brightness, maybe a little too much on the saturation. And hit OK. Oops, I need to have those two sides merged. Yep, okay, so merge those and then paint bucket. And I'm just getting that lightest color to be even lighter. And then I'll use the old lightest color on the brick pattern to make each shade lighter than the previous one. I think I need this to be just a hair lighter yet though. And maybe even still. So we'll just decrease the saturation. Okay, now let's free transform our selection again down to 4 pixels. Or actually let's do, 4 pixels. And let's add another shade. So we'll go lighter yet. We'll make our lightest shade this new light color that we've created, and our old darker shade will be the old lightest shade. And we'll do it one last time for 2 pixels. So we'll right click our selection with the marquee tool, free transform, and set this to 2 pixels now. Doesn't want to go to 2, there we go. Make sure it's still centered, hit enter. Okay, now let's take our lightest color and make it even lighter. Just double checking it there. And our darker color will, or our old lightest color will be our lightest color now. Now there's a nice shine to the side of our building. Next, let's get rid of the little corners on these brick buildings. Originally I was going to keep them, but I want to show you guys something else. Make sure that's correct. Yes. Delete the little edge there. And do the same to this side. Delete the edge. Okay. Next I want to select the left side of the building and free transform it. And right click it again and go to perspective as the option on our free transform and set this little V up here to 45. Hit enter. And I'll just pull this back up into place now. Okay, that's perfect. We've got that nice 45-degree angle, and it gives our building a nice 3D effect. I'm just going to go ahead and pull it over this way and pull it to the background as well. Whoops, didn't have it on its own layer, so I'll copy and paste it, or cut and paste it I should say, and pull it onto its own layer. Okay, there, now I have a nice back. And I'm going to go ahead and merge all these layers together. Merge. Yep. Put some paint in here. Maybe the roof is kind of like a bluish concrete color. Get rid of that section there. Or actually, I'll just delete it like so. Then I've got this section up here I've got to get painted this blue color. I just mirrored that around because it had that nice 45-degree angle I want, and then I can just cover it up. As a last step, our perspective needs fixed a little bit. The right side of this building was mirrored from the left, so it's just got a little bit of an incorrect perspective here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click near the front edge of the building and bring a polygon lasso tool selection back, and just make a selection around this little bit of the edge there to get a nice edge that goes inward, and that'll give us the illusion of perspective there. With that covers it for this video. We've created a sort of 3D building, and we've created our flat 2D building. 2D building here will work great for like a foreground tile, and our 3D building could work in the background or something. That's all I wanted to show for this video, so thank you for watching. If you liked it, please share, like, and subscribe. I've got more pixel art videos that you can watch if you want to learn other techniques I use for making pixel art. And if you're interested in either of my games, Sonic Time Twisted or No More Robots, please subscribe for updates on that stuff as well. Thanks. Overbound out. Overbound here. I'm going to show you guys how you can take photos in Photoshop and turn them into pixel art. First, we need to get acquainted with the quick selection tool over here on the left. If you don't see it, it's underneath the magic wand. Just select the magic wand and hold down, and this menu will pop up, and here it is. So select that. What this tool does is it works like a brush for selecting things. It even has the brackets to make the brush size bigger and smaller, and it has a menu for adjusting options similar to the pencil and brush tools. It will, with one click, it will attempt to find edges and stop selections at those points, at those edges. So if I click here on the inside of the bird, you can see it found a selection all the way around the bird. It selected all the gray feathers and found the back of the bird and these white feathers down here. If I click again, it will add more to the selection. Here I got the whole head. Click just up there to get a little bit more. I can continue to click and add to the selection, but what might end up happening is I might select too much. You can see there I got a little bit of the background. So what I can do when that happens is I can zoom in closer, reduce my brush size with the control or with the bracket keys, and hold Alt down, and that will make this a deselection tool. You can see the effect up here in the menu, and it has a little negative sign over the brush. And I'll click, and I'll be able to get rid of some of that extra area. I could finish this here, but I have a selection I made earlier that's perfect. You can see I selected the legs and the beak and the tail. So with this, I'm just going to copy this onto this second artboard here. And now I'm going to add a background. So I just made a new layer and dragged it behind the seagull layer. And I'm going to take the paint bucket tool and paint the background nice bright green. Up here in the menu, image, mode, index color, and it'll ask me if I want to merge layers, and I'll say okay. What we just did there was we told Photoshop we want to reduce the amount of colors that can be used by this image by indexing them and taking control of them right here. Photoshop will then downsize the images to the amount of colors you choose. Right now I have it set to 8, but it could be 24, it could be 1, which would just be the background. If it was 2, you would just get a silhouette of the bird. 3, it adds one more color. 4, so on. 8's pretty good in my book though, so I'll keep it at 8. I'm going to zoom in here close and show you a couple more options. You can set the dither here to diffusion, which will create a little pattern where the colors transition. You can set it to 50%, 100%, it's a lot. Or you can use this pattern setting, and that creates this nice little pattern. I use the pattern a lot for backgrounds, but not very much for people and animals. Noise is another option, which I don't use much, but it's there if you want it. Okay, so I'm happy with the way this looks. I've adjusted my settings here. Under palette, I want adaptive, and I'm going to hit OK. And now I just want to remove this green background. But first, I'm in index color mode still, and I need to get back to RGB because Photoshop will limit the options available to you if you're in index color mode. A lot of the tools don't work on things, so RGB is the best mode to be in. Okay, so now I'm just going to go get my magic wand tool and get rid of this green. Oops. I need to make this a regular layer rather than a background layer. So I'll just double click the little lock there and hit OK. And now I can delete this background. Okay. Zoom in close here. There's a little bit more green. I want to get rid of that color of green, so I'm gonna select it with the magic wand tool and delete it as well. Okay. Now I just have the colors I want, and I can go ahead and downsize this. Now this is the part of the video that sounds like a broken record. If you haven't already, you need to go to Preferences up here in the Edit menu and General. Set this to Nearest Neighbor, Image Interpolation to Nearest Neighbor. It prevents Photoshop from adding colors when you rotate or distort images with the free transform tools. So I'm going to go ahead and right click this, having my marquee tool selected, and hit free transform. And again, up here in this menu, make sure that nearest neighbor is selected here as well. So I'll now downscale this, and I'm going to turn my grid on so I can get an idea of the size. Each square is 16 pixels, so we'll keep going down until we're happy with the look of it. I'm looking at the bird and seeing the pixels change as I scale it, and I'm trying to choose one I like. I can always adjust the size later manually without this, and keep the look I want that I thought was best as I was scaling within 10 pixels or so. So I have the bird here at the size I want, but if I choose enter to confirm the change, it will actually not look exactly the same. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out to 100%, and I'm going to turn off the grid and the the free transform tool by hitting Control H. Both of those are turned off, and then I'm just going to do a print screen on my keyboard. That will save this screen in memory in my clipboard. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom back in, and I want you to watch what happens when I hit enter. The pixels change. That is kind of a funny thing that Photoshop does. It rearranges the pixels after the fact. But that's why I copied this to memory, so that I would have this exact version that I scaled to from earlier. So I just pasted it in here, selected it. Now I'll delete that layer since I didn't want the whole thing, and paste it back in the document and delete the background. You can see now I have both versions of the bird, and they're just a little bit slightly different. I could now come in here and start changing things a bit to get exactly the look I wanted with my pencil tool. Maybe press E for the erase tool. Fix that beak a little bit. That's cool. And I could just spend 20 minutes or so messing with the shading on this and getting exactly the look I wanted. But for this tutorial, I think this is a good place to stop, because I've shown you all the basic idea of it. When you're doing this, you might have to try the process a couple different times. If it doesn't work the first time, try a different background color before you index the color. Try to adjust the levels or the contrast in the image. If you increase the contrast, sometimes that can give a better result. So those are things to